The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday morning show. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he was 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Cranack.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Welcome to it. Weekend editions here. We're at the Single Barrel inside the Graduate 9th and P, getting you ready for the Nebraska spring game. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal, Connor Clark. We'll have Mr. Mark Cranack on site with us. Brad Fairbury, Bill Dolman joins us as well. And then the Iron Horse, Gary Sharp, as we are here till 10 o'clock. You're invited down to the Single Barrel. As always, kind of your pregame headquarter destinations for so many of you, as it is a celebration. It is spring game Saturday. And, of course, we are thinking of those folks affected by the tornadoes, the weather, and the outreach that has happened, and can join us in the stream today on Hail Varsity Radio, as we are broadcasting here. And guys, it's good to see everybody. Cranack, you're here.
Just 5 minutes late. You are here trying to do a show.
Yeah.
You're doing on time and everything.
Since this is live, we can yell at Bill that there's a seat for him over here. We're good. Fellas, Cranack, you're up in Omaha, so spend a moment here just and kind of give folks an update on your community, where you're at, and we're getting plenty of time for football today. But just wanted to spend a moment and kind of get your perspective.
Yeah. Local neighborhood, loved ones, family, friends, all good. Nobody sustained anything of any sort of significance. But friends of friends did, right? Like there's, one of my buddies who's got a brother up around 210th and Maple-ish, which was kind of the epicenter. Got his roof completely torn off. With a bunch of kids at home, and of course insurance handles all of that stuff, which is great, but that takes a while, right? Like it's going to take a long time. Maybe he literally has no roof. Like imagine chilling in your living room, looking up, and you just see the sky, right? Like that's what's happening there. So it's going to put a lot of pressure on a lot of people. Pretty crazy how much Nebraska and how many people got out of it relatively unscathed. Like even the folks we're talking about, you look at some of those homes that were just completely leveled, and like you would expect casualties to be way higher. So pretty fortunate in that respect, but all good, man. Appreciate you asking. And man, there's going to be a lot of recovery for some folks up in Elkhorn and Bennington for sure.
That's Mark Cranack with us here on Hail Varsity here at the Single Barrel Weekend Edition. Bill Dolman's to my right. Can kind of see both the fellas. Elijah's here. Connor is here. And Bill, you touched on it yesterday with just what Nebraska is about and how Nebraska stands up for Nebraska and the outreach that's going. And you saw that going quickly into effect last night in the Elkhorn and Bennington region with not only first responders, but so many folks out there to help one another, help each other out, neighbor with neighbor.
Yeah, it's an amazing scene that I think everybody got to watch unfold in real time. And we talked about it yesterday on your Hail Varsity show in the afternoon, that the videos and the real time destruction was just, I've never seen anything like it. And you feel for those people who have been so greatly affected. In the aftermath of something like that, you are heartened by the community that is Nebraska, and people's hearts pour out to Bennington and to Elkhorn and North and East Lincoln and Iowa. Across the river, there was a lot of devastation over there too. And I think there are a lot of people reaching across the border. And then you saw that outpouring nationally. Social media certainly had a lot of reaction to what took place. And I know Dave Portnoy and Barstool, they're selling T-shirts, and 100% of the proceeds are going to whether it's helping the people affected or the first responders or whatever. So there's an outpouring within the state and around the country for the people of Nebraska, because I think, Nebraska touches a lot of lives in a lot of places because people are from here and they go elsewhere. But that's, I guess, if there's a bright spot, the sun is shining right now, it's that the community feel of Nebraska is on display again.
Well, here's the other thing, too. With something like this, it's going to be months and years where Nebraskans are going to have to pitch in, right? Like, just imagine if we all see it, but to truly imagine that it happens, like your home is gone.
Neighborhood.
It's gone, right? So you need to find some hotels. You need to stay with some friends. You need to look for apartments. Like the amount of people that are going to get displaced by this, it's pretty significant.
Yeah.
And then let alone, do you rebuild over those same spots? That's going to take a long time to sort through too. So it's really a remarkable turn of events, and it's going to take a long time to recover. I think a lot of times this will happen maybe in a smaller town. And then, everybody bands together. It's all very focused. Doesn't happen a lot in giant metros, and Omaha and Lincoln, I think, got really lucky because it really was the outskirts of it. But God, you drive through some parts of Omaha and you're like, man, if that thing hit here, I mean, you're talking about thousands and thousands of people displaced and businesses just destroyed.
It's Mark Cranack, Elijah Herbal, Chris Schmidt, and Bill Dolman here. Connor Clark back in studio. Fellas, appreciate spending a couple of minutes on this. And Red Cross is where you can go to help donate. And I'm sure Nebraska will have info today during the spring game, during the Big 10 network broadcast. Let's get our starting five as folks are in the stream as we're here at the Single Barrel 9th and P, our football headquarters here before Nebraska v. Nebraska. Brandon is in. Tim Wolf checks in. Tuck is here. Moonbot says, howdy, nerds. His normal greeting for us. You have Walter from Philly, wants to run the damn ball today. Rick is here.
There's not going to be a lot of that today.
Well, we're gonna get there in a minute.
Yeah.
Justin is here. Moz, Stick, Stacy. Howdy, y'all. On my way to Lincoln from Des Moines right now. Moz, good to have you. Part of the Boulder Peace Treaty. Brian Snitley is in, and he's right on. A great comeback for Nebraska baseball last night. Rule of the Day is here. We've got our friend, the other Brian, just across the table from us. Drunk Monk is here. And Nate, all right, our old buddy Nate the great golfer. He is down in Honduras. He is up and alive and well. So, folks, he's on vacation, and he took some vacation money on the golf course 2 weeks ago. So I helped fund it.
Perfect.
Sal is in, Dion is in, as is Brandon Vogel from counterread.com. Vogues, thanks for jumping in. We were cleaning up a little bit of technical difficulty before we were able to get you a link. Thanks for your patience, bud. It's spring game Saturday, and guys will roundtable this thing. And I want to start with the moment that exists right now for not only this Nebraska football team, but kind of the moment the magnitude Rule has put on it, what he wants today to be, because that's going to go a long way from a confidence and then just not only a confidence but a competition standpoint as these guys try and get better next season in key moments.
Yeah, that certainly jumped out to me from the week of, Rule kind of potentially painted himself in the corner of saying, like, look, if it doesn't look very good, then we didn't do a very good job these past 14 practices, which I found kind of refreshing. These spring games are kind of a celebration. They can be a lot of things for a lot of people. In its cases, it's a chance for families to get to games, which is harder to do on a fall Saturday. So it can be a lot of things, but I kind of like that there's a little bit of, seriousness or stakes placed on it. And when you think about football, you only get 12 Saturdays a year guaranteed, and you get one here in the spring. Like, yeah, it is kind of the job to go out there and look competent and look good. every time out, because you don't get many of those.
It's Brandon Vogel with us here, a Saturday morning edition of Hail Varsity Radio as we get you all set for Nebraska's spring game. Kickoff's about 3 hours away here as we get you geared up at the Single Barrel. A lot of people here getting breakfast, getting some coffee, getting some drinks in them. And Brandon, as we look at this game here this morning, we had the discussion with Mitch Sherman. We kind of had the discussion with you on Thursday. You always have to keep in mind that show versus reality aspect of the spring game. How much of it is reality and how much of it is a show for the fans, not wanting to show too much to opposing teams as well. I guess the value of the spring game maybe has gone down, but this feels like a unique year in that we're still going to get a lot of insight, especially at that quarterback position.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be the best look any of us get at the three quarterbacks, two of which are true freshmen. So it's kind of a first look until one of them, trots out there to start against UTEP in the fall. So it's meaningful from that regard. And I think I do try to go into these spring games kind of largely expectation free. The more of them that I've been able to watch and cover, and just try and react to what I see. And I think oftentimes that's more individuals. A guy pops, a player you haven't seen a lot from yet, shows you something. So I think that's kind of where I'm at entering the game. But in terms of what can you take from it, as far as the quarterbacks, we all probably watched the Polynesian Bowl back in January to get a look at Dylan Raiola. Well, those were very talented high school players. This is against college players. So I do think there's something there, particularly for those two true freshmen.
The legacy of Brian Knuckles. Is anybody going to be able to get past that today? We'll find out. At quarterback in particular, what are you looking for from each of the guys, right? So if you had to pick one thing about Raiola, what are you looking for with him? And then what about Kalen? And then what about Harburg? Because I think it's different for all three.
Yeah, with Harburg, we'll start there. I think the piece that was missing for all of Nebraska's quarterbacks last year was just the ability to consistently make the throws that were there. So not necessarily the deep shots down the field, but more of the timing stuff. And, they had injuries at receiver that impact that as well. So I think just kind of being in command of the offense would where I would be at with Harburg. And then with Raiola, I mean, he comes in, with kind of the 5-star pedigree. Well, not kind of, that's what it is. So the bar is a little bit higher there. I think like you want to see a couple of wow throws, and see a little bit of the rhythm I think that he has with the receivers so far. And Kalen's, not that much different. He's made some wow throws and pieces of practice that have been shared out there. So yeah, I think Kalen kind of falls somewhere between the two, if those are the two extremes.
Well, can we roundtable this real fast? Like, what are you guys expecting from the Husker quarterbacks today? Because I think it's an interesting discussion. It's the most insight we're probably going to get in the spring game today. Is what do the quarterbacks look like aside from maybe the lines of scrimmage?
We got your mic going. You hear him?
Schmidt, you're really quiet.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
All right.
You're on the board.
How about now? Better?
There we go. Nice.
Okay. So I want some playmaking, but above all, I want management. I want competency. I think Rule's big thing about taking care of the football, that's paramount to me. Make some money throws, yeah, but don't have any turnovers and make the safe play versus always forcing the spectacular. Because how many turnovers did you see last year? 6, 8, something like that, between picks and fumbles and all that. So
God, that really carried through. Isn't that crazy? Like
yeah,
you saw in the spring game
what you saw last spring, you saw every game, and that was no good. So just competency. Yeah, competency to me is making some plays, but it's also, just being a dude, and that's taking care of the football.
Individually, I honestly don't know what to expect from the three, But what I'm watching for, it really does differ. With Harburg, listen, there's a reason I'm not a quarterback's coach. I don't know exactly what are perfect mechanics, but I think you'll know it when you see it, right? So I'm hoping for him that he's able to be accurate at that medium depth, at the deep depth too. My goodness, so there were some of the deep passes, whether it was the receivers going wrong or him throwing wrong, whatever it was. Sometimes that was like 8 yards away from, completion. So just simple completion percentage for him. For Kalen, I just want to see how he manages the moment, right? Like, biggest stadium he's probably ever played in is Buell right now, right? I mean, truly,
It's true.
Right? That's probably the biggest crowd he's ever played in front of, and he's got less to lose. Not a ton of pressure on Kalen. I hope he plays like that today. I want to see him do that. No one's expecting him at all to be the starting quarterback this year. Not even the backup. Well, nobody's expecting that.
Yeah, and that's why, to me, whenever I look at this game today, like stats, I guess I'm taking him with a grain of salt in a moment like this, where as you say, Kalen's in the biggest moment he's ever been in. Raiola, I mean, from what it sounds like, kind of grew up dreaming of being a Husker. It's his first time in Memorial Stadium as well. Harburg's gone through all the mechanics reworking this offseason. It's not, to me, about what the stats look like once 2 o'clock rolls around today. To me, it's fully about the eye test. Are the quarterbacks putting the football in danger?
Yep.
How are they running the offense? Being on campus for guys like Kalen and Raiola for 4 months now, I'm not expecting the chemistry with the wide receivers to be ready to go as if it's fall. I'm expecting that to be a little bit clunky. What I'm looking for is, as I said, the eye test. What does it look like whenever they run the offense? Do they look confident in the pocket? Are they able to feel the pressure? Because at the end of the day, the stats aren't what's important in a spring game. After all the turnovers last year, like the number one thing I want to see today is quarterbacks that don't put the football in danger, keep the ball with the offense, and hey, in the Big Ten, a punt's not the worst scenario at the end of the drive.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, too, that the only stat that does matter on paper is that turnover number. I mean, you talk about how bad it was last year, and even Rule said it on Thursday, saying, hey, I want us to play a complete game. We're not going to be fumbling the ball around in the second half when we got the 2s and 3s in. We got to take this seriously from, start to finish. So I agree. I think it's, 95% eye test here today, and then you kind of go back and you look at the TO column, and is there anything? If there's nothing, obviously great. If there's a lot, then you clearly have stuff to work on over the summer leading into the fall. But that's the only stat I really look at. But, eye test with Raiola, eye test with Kalen, with Harburg, really with anybody on this team. But obviously the quarterbacks are going to be under a microscope today. I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit of an air out just because of, again, we talk about turnovers, but at the same time, this is probably the lowest consequence opportunity that they have to do that. And the fans are also going to want to see that to a certain extent as well. So I'm kind of curious to see what they do in that regard. Obviously, build some freshman confidence up with him and Kalen. And Schmitty, you said this yesterday on the show. What does Harburg look like? What does that progression look like? Because we've heard a ton of it. What does that look like on the field? That's something I'm really interested in as well.
Mark said that we're not quarterback coaches, but let's face it, we are experts.
Yeah.
Because we watch a lot.
100%.
Right. So we watch football.
Quote of the day right there.
I watch Red Zone.
Yeah.
I'm a little on the opposite side of Elijah. I want to see the quarterback's chemistry with the wide receivers. That's one of the things all spring ball that has been, I think, the biggest adjustment maybe for Dylan Raiola and Danny Kalen, and maybe to a certain extent for Heinrich Harburg, because last year when he was pitching the ball around, his number one receiver was Billy Kemp, who spent the last half of the season injured and all of his life about 5'6". So now you have receivers who are rangy, tall, fast. Now Malachi Coleman didn't go through spring ball, but these are the fastest receivers and probably the most talented core of receivers that these young quarterbacks, including Harburg, have ever played with. So adjusting to the speed of the game with those guys, and you've got guys like Banks coming in and Ayor coming in with the experience, helping those younger quarterbacks. So given the fact that they have been untouchable in practice with their green jerseys, that doesn't preclude the fact that you can't develop chemistry and understanding patterns and what the catch radius is for the receivers. So, and I think that's one of the reasons why Rule said we're gonna shoot logo threes. We're gonna have and he used the word God bless him shootout, that we could go back to the old days of our lexicon, and they're gonna air it out. And I think that's
Today.
certainly not like what we saw back in the 70s and 80s, but the fact that we will see the quarterbacks and see if there is chemistry that's involved with those guys. And, Nebraska, they say we're going to go – I hate the term good on good, right? It shouldn't everybody be good.
What do you want? Crappy? I'm on the crappy on
Does
crappy
that mean the second, third team
That's the second half of the spring
okay,
game.
okay, bad on bad get out there. The pretty good and the pretty good. Colorado, it's what's left versus what's left. But
brutal on brutal. Dang it.
But
here.
I just want to see the quarterback chemistry with the receivers. To me, that's the big deal.
Can I clarify my point real fast here? Just that there will be Kalen's going to have chemistry with some guys. Rilo's going to have chemistry with some guys. But with how the spring league has been set up, the fact that it's been divided to thirds, the team, I'm not 100% sure that we're going to see Rilo have chemistry with everybody on the roster. Kalen have chemistry with everybody on the roster. I think at times it's going to look clunky out there. I think there's going to be some guys that have some chemistry together, but I guess we'll see. That's what the spring game's all about.
Vogues, is it going to be hard? Vogues, is it going to be hard not to overreact if someone wows you today? And you're not that guy, but just in general, let's just zoom out on the fan base in the state. Right? You've been starved for really high level quarterback play for a while. If one of them or all of them go out and light it up, O Street's never going to close tonight.
I think that's always the primary challenge with the spring game is not to overreact to what you see, and try to find that balance. And as everybody's gone through and talked about it, like I think these are all really good points. That the notion of airing it out, I kind of want to see that too today, because when I look at Nebraska for the fall, like all of their upside, like the closer they can get to their ceiling, probably depends mostly on improvement in the passing game. Like, and yeah, you want to have a good running game, of course. You would like to have even an improved running game from Nebraska, but let's say that the running game's just kind of average, which is what it was last year. Like we saw last year what it was like. They kept running the ball, even though like it was severe diminishing returns as they got deeper and deeper into Big Ten play. And they still went 5-7 and really should have been a bowl team. And I know that expectations are higher. I think the floor is higher than that in 2024. But getting there, we've kind of seen what it looks like if they just have to run the ball, maybe even more than they want. If not having to do that, probably depends on having the ability to throw the ball more efficiently. So, yeah, if you go into today and they're like, yeah, we're going to run it like 12 times, per team, and otherwise we're just going to work on throwing the football, that would make some sense to me.
Brandon Vogel is with us on the Varsity Weekend Edition presented by Cornhead Lager, and we are taking XLR Connection donations here over at the Single Barrel.
And we're going to have a fun time squeezing in as Gary Sharp rolls in with his sugar-free Red Bull.
Yeah, if you have...
You're going to have an
we
extra
have the
full
starting
table.
5 on the air at the Single Barrel as we speak.
But if you do have spare XLR cables to help with audio transmission, we would appreciate
and
your
spare
support.
StreamYard boxes that we can
yes.
fit everybody in.
That would be great. See, Chris is trying to make a quip
better,
about that, but
Connor?
no one can hear
You're
it.
still really quiet. I don't know
so
why.
That's
I'm really
kind of what I'm
quiet.
getting at. It's kind of what I'm getting
I'm
at.
sorry. All right.
I'm working on the
sound like you're
StreamYard
standing in
settings
the
here.
corner, but we'll
So
figure it.
long
Chris,
and
Chris,
short,
we'll take your comments off air in the comments.
I'm least important anyway. I'm going to go to the bar.
So defensively today, Brandon, we'll probably see limited minutes from Ty Robinson, Nash Huntmacher, the guys that are proven, Luke Gifford, similar to how a lot of those guys have been held out of scrimmages. So you'll see him some. How about some of the names that we're looking forward to on defense, specifically as guys that are candidates to create havoc? So maybe not just necessarily dudes that make the tackle. I'm not talking about those guys. I'm talking about the next coming of Terrell Farley, or Josh Bullock. So just somebody that is ready to turn the ball over, make splash plays defensively. Guys that will actually get some snaps today that maybe don't have a lot of experience. Who comes to mind for you?
Yeah, good question. I mean, because last year, we kind of saw flashes, I think, from Princeville and Cam Linhart, and those guys ended up being really, really good as true freshmen during the season. So are there those sorts of players? He was here last year, but a player I'm kind of intrigued to see more of because I think he's on that second wave of D linemen, but it kind of gets overlooked a bit. Is Elijah Judy, the Texas A&M transfer? Heard some good
People
things
named
about
Elijah
him.
are always overlooked.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. This spring, I'm super intrigued by Bly Hill, the transfer that they brought in. I mean, if he's Big Ten ready right now, like what a find for this coaching staff. And indications have been like he's close to that top group in the secondary, 6'3" corner from St. Francis. Like he just kind of came out of nowhere. Like it wasn't until signing day that anyone even knew that Nebraska had him in the boat, which is not how it goes in today's transfer portal. So those are probably two that come to mind first for me defensively as far as today goes.
So, by the way, we got to start our brainstorm soon enough on if there's two starting Hills at corner.
It's Hill and Hill Law Firm, I think.
Well, but there's uphill climb. There's
we were talking about this earlier in the week with Dylan Edwards in the transfer portal. You could have Hill and Hill in the defensive back room and Dylan in the offensive backfield.
Wow,
it's almost like a match made in heaven. But Brandon, I wanted
that's
to
the perfect response, Mark. Just wow.
I wanted to go to a name that hasn't been talked about a lot, but I feel like we get a lot of comments in the stream about this guy, Tristan Alvano. Confidence level heading into year 2 with him. I know that he's been put in a lot of situations where he's had to step up and make a big kick, and sometimes it hasn't gone his way. What's the importance of his improvement from freshman to sophomore year?
I think it's a pretty big piece of the overall picture for Nebraska. Hit 60%, which when you're a team playing the way Nebraska was playing, very much defense first, an offense that was struggling mightily. A missed field goal for that sort of team doesn't become just 3 points that you lost out on. It becomes maybe 4.5. Especially those games where he had multiple misses. So I think he's a good candidate to improve from where he was as a true freshman. It was a tough spot, not just in terms of the game situations, but in sort of the team makeup piece of it. Having some better efficiency offensively, I think helps him too, because particularly for a young player, if it feels like, boy, we don't get many scoring chances, I really need to knock this through. Who knows what role that plays. So football's a tough game to assess, but it's a beautiful game in that all this stuff is kind of intertwined, and it's tough to just pull one thread out and say, here, this one needs to be stronger.
Brandon Vogel with us from Counterread, counterread.com. Is this a little bit better, Connor? I hope. Okay.
I've been working my magic behind the scenes.
We're going to buy Elijah a drink for his technical savviness.
It is 8 a.m.
Elijah.
We want to thank Chris for joining the show.
Yeah. So, Vogues, I want to get your take on the recruiting side of things and how that has shifted. Before we say goodbye, get your take on the recruiting angle and then just what is happening with you and Aaron Sorensen with Counterread, how folks can get signed up. So this is a little bit of a shift from Rule and their peeps now into year 2 on the recruiting front.
Yeah, Rule talked about it this week about making this an official visit day, particularly for some of their players who basically have to fly in. And it's a good mix. You've got a couple of guys from Florida, a guy from Texas, a guy from California, a big old lineman from Utah, which I think, given Donovan Raiola's connections to that community, is going to continue to be a thing. So it's kind of the classic blend. I think the typical thinking is you wouldn't maybe want to use, unless the guy really wanted to, you wouldn't want to use up some of your official visits this early. But I think there's a little bit of upside to that when you look at Nebraska historically in terms of recruiting. Like you're going to get most of your commits in June and July. This being April 27th, you're almost to May. So I think you're close enough that you're not worried about, oh yeah, I went to the spring game and that's a distant memory. Now I'm at, Miami's camp or whatever, and this is the hot new thing. So I think, and in terms of the overall talent level of the group, just looking at their recruiting rankings, pretty good, which it should be. Like this year 2 for a new coaching staff is your time to move in recruiting. And if you're going to kind of raise above a level that a team traditionally recruits at, this is probably when you're going to do it. So that'll be interesting to see as the weekend continues. What does Nebraska end up walking away here with in terms of recruiting?
I will say, like, kidding, not kidding, those recruits got a hell of a welcome to Lincoln yesterday with the severe weather rolling through. Like, that's the ultimate, like with the winter enrollees, it's like, oh, here's the sub-zero weather, and now you're visiting for a spring game. Here's the tornadic weather. That is a fitting welcome for those guys. Welcome to Nebraska.
Indeed. I was thinking about that yesterday. So,
Vogues, what's happening with you and Aaron's coverage, and how can folks subscribe?
Yeah, you can head over to counterread.com. Aaron and I put out our little spring game quick guide this morning, so you've still got a little bit of time to read that before the game itself starts. And then, next week, of course, be breaking down what we saw, what we didn't see, and then kind of full speed ahead into some bigger off-season topics. So twice weekly subscriber newsletter. I'd love to have anybody hop over there and join us. You can sign up for free, try it for 7 days, and hopefully after that you'll want to be in it for the long haul.
Get that annual, man. That's where
Yes.
it's at.
Brandon Vogel with us here, counterread.com. Vogues, thanks for joining us. Thanks for taking time to talk some spring ball, and always good to get caught up with you, man.
Sounds good, guys. Enjoy the day.
All right, there he is, Brandon Vogel with us. We're here at the Single Barrel inside the Graduate pregame for the spring game, 9th and P, and we're here, we've been here a lot of years, and we thank Heath and the crew for having us. Just an awesome setup. We are all family-like, kind of next on. I'm kind of on Cranak's lap. Dolman's kind of on my lap, and Elijah's wearing a Santa hat. So that's how it's going today.
Need visuals.
No.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Connor's back.
You made it sound a lot worse than it is, actually.
Well, Connor's back in studio, but every morning at 7 a.m. there is amazing breakfast here at the Single Barrel. You want a steak, you want a whiskey, you want a Guinness, beer, the pork chops.
Didn't have breakfast.
All of the above.
But the breakfast is incredible. So, Cranak, I want to get your thought. Elijah, Billy D, Connor, let's roundtable this again. And I want to ask about the intensity today. Do you think it gets chippy? Do you think it gets high level? Or do you think at some point they kind of ramp back the RPMs today? Do you think it stays locked in? I mean, I think between both lines of scrimmage coaches, they're going to be trying to throw haymakers at one another. But does that kind of filtrate to the rest of the squad?
You want Havoc?
Hope not.
Havoc will be one of those defensive players getting a little too aggressive in approaching the quarterback. And if a guy with the green jersey goes down hard, there might be chippiness between the coaches. Because I do not think that they want those guys touched. Then you got, offensive linemen are going to be in their grays. So I assume that they're allowed to go 100%, right? But I do think you'll see a lot of aggressiveness, especially on defense. And I mentioned this yesterday. I think you have a lot of guys auditioning for jobs at Nebraska and guys auditioning for jobs in the transfer portal. Nebraska hasn't had anybody go. which is great. That means the culture is good here, but people are going to see what opportunity they're going to have going forward at Nebraska. And I think that we will see a lot of depth get thinned out after what transpires today. And maybe they'll go to Colorado to fill out their 53-man roster. But I do think you're going to see some over-aggressiveness maybe from some of those guys who are fighting. This is the college NFL, that they're going to be fighting for roster spots, and the Turk is coming for some.
Well, let's be clear. Like, whenever you listen to Matt Rule, like, I don't think he's going to want a juiceless spring game. And it starts with the man up top, and it starts with all the position coaches, the coordinators. They're the ones that kind of set the tone in terms of how much energy this game is going to have, how physical this game is going to be. And when I listen to this coaching staff, I don't think they're going to ask these guys to rant back in his spring game. They want this to be treated, I think, as close to a game as it can be. Keep the guys in the green jerseys up. Let's not injure anybody, but at the same time, as you said, Bill, this is your audition, not only for the fall, maybe for the transfer portal. It's an audition moment. I think it starts with the coaching staff, and everything I know about this coaching staff lets me know that they don't want this game to be intensity-free. They want a game that's going to have a lot of intensity while keeping guys safe. It's a balance to that you have to walk there. But I don't think this coaching staff is going to be mad at people for going too hard in a spring game. They're the type of coaching staff that wants people going full go all the time.
Well, and I think the type of game it's going to be, if they're going to air it out, you're going to have a lot of one-on-one battles at receiver and defensive back. And those are two positions that really aren't settled, I wouldn't say, right? I mean, name your starting five DBs. Like, do that right now. Good luck. Good luck. You can name probably Tommy Hill,
Tommy Hill,
Deshaun Singleton,
Bly Hill,
maybe. Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying.
There's some competition there.
There's a lot, right? So those guys are going to be hitting, and those are the types of plays too that are wide open, right? You're hitting with nobody else around, right?
Well, and you can have those battles without headhunting.
Yeah, you can.
Without injuring a guy.
Yeah,
but I think there's going to be some scrappiness
going
on between the receivers and the DBs today, and God, you hope there is. And
I think just football, exactly. You hope there is.
Well, right, and I think that's just the way they practice too. Like, we've talked about it on this show, guys, for years, where it's just like, if you play tackle football, you should probably practice tackling. Like, that's just probably a thing that you should be good at. And for years and years and years, Nebraska had coaching staffs that didn't do a lot of that. Rule absolutely does. And I think it showed last year. And so I don't think they know how to do it any other way. I don't think they're going to thud up. I think they're just going to knock the hell out of each other and then understand that they have, 5 months to recover and they're going to be just fine.
It was funny listening. Oh, go ahead.
Well, real quick here, Bill. I think that this spring game should be competitive, will be very competitive, and could have a little bit of scrappiness to it because they've been competing against each other all spring. I mean, it's not like they're just going out there and practicing, right? They're actively competing as teams for 4 or 5 weeks, and then all of a sudden, you get to put that competitiveness and that spirit on display in front of, 60,000 people that'll be here today. I think that absolutely carries over. Now, there's an element of being smart to that. As you guys said, if there's a green jersey on the ground, things might get out of control, and you might see somebody, as Schmitty said earlier this week, running stairs during the game. But it's just one of those things where it's like it's a balance between, okay, you guys have been at each other's necks for 4 weeks in spring ball. You've been actively competing against each other. Why not do that in front of a crowd? Why not let that go just a little bit? Obviously, it's not going to be the same intensity as if you're playing Michigan, right? But you have to throw in that competitive aspect, spring game or not, show or not, too, for that fact. So I think today is pretty competitive. I hope it's pretty competitive. And I'm here to see that, competitive nature and that competitive spirit, no matter what the position group is.
Quick question.
Like Michigan, though, the other teams, the teams are going to know what plays are being
That is also
like
true.
Michigan. So very similar in that way.
Quick question for the group. If, as Connor says, there is somebody running stairs during the spring game, if they run up past you, do you give them a high five or no?
Probably not.
Yeah?
Totally. You hand out the water like a marathon.
You get them a hot dog and smuggle in a cornhead beer.
They're going to have to run more after that.
And then you shame them. Be like, next time maybe hit somebody.
But he's got to be careful. It might have an NIL
Hit
deal
the
with
quarterback. Hit him. Jeez.
You might have an NIL deal with a different hot dog company and beer brand. But anyway,
Be like, nice hands, feet. What are we doing?
I was amused by, I think it was Steve Simple that asked the question in the presser earlier in the week, about the concept of playing a game on Saturday. Where did that come from? And I understood what Steve was asking, and the look on Rule's face was like, well, what do you mean? That's what we do. But the spring games have become such showcases for nuances and whatever else, anything but a game. And Rule was kind of like, well, the purpose of this whole thing is to actually play football.
Right.
But I understood what Steve was saying. But, yeah, I agree that there's probably going to be much more resemblance to actual football this afternoon in Lincoln than I'm coming up with some cockamamie point system and whatever else we've seen in showcases the last couple of years.
Are we going to, as Sports Center runs a segment right now to our right, on Colorado holding their spring game today, are there going to be any comparisons from Husker fans between how it looks at Nebraska and how it looks at Colorado?
Apparently, it's pouring out in Colorado right now, so I'm not exactly sure what kind of showcase or if they have enough players. But
there's the question.
I think that there's going to be some disappointment. I was listening to some Colorado sports talk this week about what's after the Dylan Edwards news.
Oh, they were talking about Colorado?
Well, actually, yes.
Wow.
So kind of a surprise. And in fact, the host said, I really don't pay much attention to this because I'm a pro sports person. But they're talking about, Dylan Edwards and McLean and 22 players have gone into the portal there, right? They're talking about he doesn't feel comfortable in Pat Shurmur's system because it's set up for Shedeur. Like, if you are continually talking about setting up an offense for Shedeur Sanders and that players are not comfortably being in the system as it is set up. And then the other thing was, well, there's NIL money elsewhere. That's the only thing that we can think of that's going on at Colorado as to why players want to leave the offensive scheme and NIL money. That's the only thing you can think of.
They said they don't want to play
players.
For clicks.
Well, isn't that indicative? Imagine if USC last year, Lincoln Riley said, our offense was set up for Caleb Williams and not the guys that we have around there. Like, that's horrible, horrible roster construction if you have not set up your offense for the guys that you have. If you have not recruited guys that will fit into your offense alongside Shedeur Sanders well. And I'm going to lay it out now. I'm not the guy who is complete doom and gloom about Colorado because we were in the same boat last year. And what happens? Colorado goes off to that rocking start to the year and kills Nebraska. So I'm not fully in the Colorado's in shambles just yet mode, but there's a lot of warning signs out of Boulder that it is not built for long-term success. That is the thing I will say. Yeah. I'm not completely out on Colorado being all right this season. I am out on Colorado long-term being set up for success under Deion Sanders because there's so many warning signs that come out, just as you said, Bill. Well, the offense isn't set up for these guys.
NFL. And I think Sharpie nailed it during the Average Joe podcast that he'll be in Big D sooner rather than later or some NFL landing spot. And we're here at the Single Barrel inside the Graduate pregame for the Nebraska spring game. Guys, let's talk about vibe and feel here. We'll get back into some of the specifics here, but you have a freshness, a feel, and a lot of energy, not only with the Raiola factor, but how this team's progressed. You've got a pretty transparent coach with laying out the good, the bad, the ugly of how spring has gone. There was a tease last year with that 5-7, but man, November looked promising. It could come together, but you just got a little bit more bounce in your step, it feels like, from Husker Nation with an excitement level. They're very measured, and there's a lot of wait and see, which we totally understand. All that being said, it's okay to dream a little bit like, okay, this could be a really good, fun breakthrough year for Nebraska. And I think you feel that. You feel that this spring.
Yeah, probably, and especially when you look at how last spring carried over into the fall. Like, maybe we didn't want to believe the turnovers were going to be a thing, but they were. Yeah, and it does feel like things are in place. And when we say a breakout year, I don't think that means natty. I don't even think that means playoffs. I think that means contention. I think that means you ruin other teams' plans regularly. I think that means you get 8 to 9 wins. I think it means you, I don't know, can just play competent football. You can do punt returns. You can you can get off the field on third down. You can run the ball when you need to. Just sound team. And resources wise, there is no reason why Nebraska can't be, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, in terms of resources, prestige, access to athletes, and all that, on a year-to-year basis, probably have the advantage, right? But over time, there's no reason Nebraska can't catch them. There's no reason Nebraska can't be like Utah is in the Pac-12, right? Or like Virginia Tech used to be in the ACC.
Well, you could say how Utah used to be in the Pac-12.
Yeah,
now.
Used to be. How Nebraska used to be in the, Big 8, Big 12. There's no reason they can't get to that level. And in fact, they have underperformed for a long, long time.
With the resources they have.
Well,
100%.
And the Midwest is crying for a premier program.
Kansas State has been a problem in the Big 12 for a long time. So don't talk. Iowa State has its cup of coffee from time to time. So don't tell me, well, because of the location, you can't do it. Like, look, Ames sucks too. So does Manhattan. I don't want to hear it. It's not even.
Let's talk Lawrence. KU and Missouri, for God's sake, are thriving.
Well, and just you can go look at the NFL draft. There's plenty of guys from the Midwest region, if not 500 miles of Lincoln, 750 miles of Lincoln, that are going to the NFL every single year. There's talent to choose from. There's been premier programs in the Midwest before. Yeah. You can set up a premier program in the Midwest. And right now, as I look at it, this region of America is crying for an elite program. And it's been done before. You have the resources to go out and do it, and it's up for grabs.
And let me clarify. Lincoln and Omaha do not suck. In fact, they suck the least out of those cities that I just brought up.
So much for that Chamber of Commerce job at Ames and Ankeny.
Well, I'm just saying, but that's what people say. Oh, you don't have access to athletes. You got the weather that's terrible. I'm like, have you been to Ames? Like, have you been to Manhattan? Are you kidding me? And those dudes they're competing for championships within their conference.
I think it's been done in Lincoln before.
Yeah, right?
Just saying.
Yeah. And how about Iowa City? What is that, Palm Springs or something? Like, it's Iowa City. And those guys are handling business. Madison? Come on.
Madison's nice. Let's not hate on Madison.
I'm not hating on it, but I'm just saying you get negative wind chill in November there through March.
Mark Kranek, director of Iowa Tour and Travel.
Jeez. Yeah. Come to Iowa. We sometimes don't suck. I don't know. I don't even know what the slogan would be for that. What if you had to come up with the Iowa tourism slogan? Just find a new career at that point. What are you even trying to do? Like, it's that point you really examine all the decisions you've made in life to that point.
You could really try and appease the people that enjoy punts, inadequate fair catch signals, and really bad
first and second round linemen and tight ends that are picked.
Yeah. Or if you're a George Kittle enthusiast.
Well, Walter has nailed it. No beaches in Ann Arbor. They figured it out. They figured out how to win big. You had, at one point, 4 straight Michigan players get drafted consecutively last night. So I think you've got the guy who Iowa they neighbor other states.
That's a great way of putting it.
There it is.
Right now, our friend Sharpie is going to come after us. He's just.
But you notice what Gary did. Gary's a refugee.
Yeah,
he escaped Iowa and he came to the good life. And we welcome him with open arms. It's not the people of Iowa. Well, it is the people.
Let's just call it like it is.
Yeah.
It's called spade a spade.
It's when those people are allowed to be around each other and form crowds. That's what we don't like. The individuals are pretty good. The mob mentality of Iowa in general, not so much.
Well, have I ever told you about the time I was in Iowa City? I traveled with the Husker baseball team for Husker Vision in just wearing a Husker polo, which I was required to do that weekend. In Iowa City, there's people rolling down their windows and yelling at me, and I'm like, this is insanity.
That was you, wasn't the Nebraska thing.
Iowa City, man. There's so many people there. I remember, going there years ago. And they have a lot of Chicago kids that can't make it into Northwestern that go to Iowa.
Okay.
Right? Basically,
I'm a
Hey,
fan.
Connor, we got Connor who could make it into Northwestern going to Nebraska.
hey,
Wherever I'm here too.
they're like, keep driving down 80, bud. You can't even stop here in Iowa City.
Nope. They want to be as far away as
You are
possible.
not. They're like, hold on, you are not going to help AAU status. Get to Lincoln.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
We're sending
What
you
are
to Bill
doing?
Dolman.
Oh man, I forgot I lost my train of thought.
Meanwhile, it took Kranak and I 6 years to get out of Nebraska.
I know. I redshirted.
Twice. Redshirted. You got a COVID
He
year.
redshirted and then he got hurt again.
Way before COVID. That was fun. We have
Oh yeah,
talked.
the people in Chicago, the people in Iowa City, like they think they're like Grateful Dead and like Fish fans, or they're like hippies, right? They're just like, yeah, we're down, we're hippies, like
We have hills.
we're all about being free, or whatever. And those fish stickers are like on a Mercedes Benz, or they're on like a Land Rover or something like. You're like,
This is similar to your militia Michigan rant
oh,
last year in East Lansing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to ask Mark the Michigan bands question
what's that?
from a couple days ago on
Oh,
Thursday.
yeah.
A Michigan band?
We asked
question?
Bill what his favorite band from Michigan was.
No.
Oh yeah. Are you going?
Brandon, excuse me.
Yeah, Vogues. Oh, so are you going Iggy Pop, like Bob Seger, Dee Snider, Ted Nugent, Insane Clown Posse, and
Kid Rock.
Eminem and Kid Rock.
Have you
Who are you
noticed
drafting?
about 60% of those guys give militia vibes? You know what I'm saying? Like they really do. Yeah. Like I mean, it would not be
Ted
Kid
does.
No, Kid Rock would be. Have you not seen his social media presence?
Well, totally. No, what I'm
Yeah.
saying is Kid Rock would not be the person I select there as a favorite. Like that's something. My name is Kid. Like, yeah, we know.
You can't also go Insane Clown Posse. That's where Brandon
No,
went.
like, that's a little
I was a
tough,
little
too.
surprised by that.
When you mentioned Bob Seger, classic voice.
Yeah, but okay, here's the deal.
You're a fan of the beard.
You take Bob Seger quality,
Yeah.
but you take him to be safe so that nobody really thinks that what you really would pick.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going Ted Nugent right out of the gate, but that's me.
I mean,
But most people would say, oh, Bob Seger, so you don't judge me.
you can't say Eminem because it's not a band, right?
He's
Steve
a
Miller?
musician, though. I mean, I think
Red
musician.
Wine chimes in.
Yeah.
Steve from Detroit, yeah.
Okay,
Eminem probably.
I would go Steve Miller Band.
Yeah, but Ann Arbor's like that one bastion of where the wine drinkers can hang out, where the pinky in the air can hang out, and they're surrounded by militias.
It's
who
the
are
Napa
protecting
Valley
them.
of Michigan.
And they have this handshake agreement that the militias protect them, and from the federal government that's overreaching.
Jesus.
And I mean, they plotted they were trying to kidnap and kill the governor. Come on,
Allegedly.
they like raid the state house. Like, what are they?
We have a news break coming up here shortly. That's Hail Varsity Radio
we need to
45
get to break
seconds.
now.
weekend edition here at the Single Barrel, your headquarters pre-Nebraska. It's near Nebraska v. Nebraska. The spring game. We'll get to more of your stream comments. The Iron Horse, Gary Sharp coming up. Bill Dolman is here. Mr. Mark Kranak. Elijah Herbal and Connor Clark, Chris Schmidt, thanks for hanging out. We'll take a quick news break and then get right back at it. It's Hail Varsity powered by Cornhead Lager.
News. I'm Brian Clark. Another threat of extreme weather today in the middle part of the country. Friday, parts of Nebraska were hit by tornadoes, including the Elkhorn neighborhood of Omaha, where residents like Jason Sunday had to take shelter.
We headed downstairs quickly, and we were in the downstairs bathtub, and just like the movie said, it was like a freight train, and you knew when the roof was coming off because that was a loud pop and sucking motion. It was pretty scary.
Hundreds of homes and buildings were destroyed or damaged, but authorities say sufficient early warning prevented any deaths and minimized injuries. Protests at more than 36 college campuses continue over Israel's war in Gaza. At the University of Pennsylvania, demonstrator Emma Herndon says
We're hoping that they recognize the testament to the voice of so much of the student body that's present here, and the faculty that are present as well.
The university's president has called on protesters to disband their encampments. In New York, the first week of testimony in former President Trump's criminal trial concluded with testimony from his longtime assistant, Rona Graff. ABC's Erica Tursky said she talked about issues related to alleged hush money payments that Trump made.
It's an entry in our contact system for Stormy Daniels, Graff testified. I believe it contains her mobile phone number. Graff also said she had a vague recollection of seeing Daniels at Trump Tower in the reception area on the 26th floor. Did you know at the time that she was an adult film actress? Prosecutor Susan Hoffinger asked. Graff answered, yes, I did. And she recalled hearing Trump say Daniels may be an interesting contestant on The Apprentice.
Trump pleaded not guilty. The NTSB setting investigators at the scene of a freight train derailment in New Mexico. There have been nearby evacuations and headaches for Amtrak customers. Amtrak service is suspended. No injuries have been reported. You're listening to ABC News.
The Omaha Steaks Spring Sale is the perfect time to get fired up for spring grilling. Head over to omahasteaks.com and save on all your favorites or discover something new. Plus, when you use promo code QUALITY at checkout, you'll get an extra $30 off your order. With 50% site-wide, you're going to want to hurry before the sale ends. Go to omahasteaks.com and don't forget to use promo code QUALITY to get an extra $30 off at checkout. Minimum order may be required.
Omaha Steaks, America's original butcher.
Offer not valid in all states or where prohibited by law. Loans are subject to lender approval. See website for details.
Honey, the credit card bill came and we're maxed out.
Maxed out cards, rent is due. We just need some extra cash to help us get by.
Maybe we should go to 27cash.com.
With our bad credit?
27cash.com is one of the largest personal loan networks. They can help people with any type of credit get up to $5,000, and cash can hit our bank account as soon as tomorrow.
When you need extra cash, go to 27cash.com. That's 27cash.com.
Severe weather tears through southeastern Nebraska Friday afternoon. I'm Jeff Bryden, KFOR News. Lincoln experienced a severe weather outbreak Friday afternoon, including a major tornado, which touched down just outside of the city limits.
Started in the Lincoln vicinity, moved past Waverly, and then moved up towards Waterloo and into western Elkhorn, and then up through Blair and into western Iowa.
National Weather Service lead meteorologist from the Valley office, Van DeWald, told KFOR News 5 survey teams are being dispatched today to learn details of the tornado, including how long it was on the ground. Lincoln is once again under an enhanced risk of severe weather this afternoon into this evening.
That would be setting up near the Kansas-Nebraska border, maybe mid-afternoon, 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and then that maybe pushes into the Lincoln area for late afternoon into early evening.
National Weather Service lead meteorologist from the Valley office, Van DeWald, told KFOR News all severe weather hazards will be possible. Stay tuned to KFOR and KFORnow.com for updates should severe weather develop in our area. More information has been released regarding the damage a tornado dealt to Garner Industries Friday afternoon. A plastic injection molding service located at North 98th Street and Cornhusker Highway between Lincoln and Waverly. Lancaster County Chief Deputy Ben Houchin said when emergency personnel arrived, they found the building had collapsed and several individuals were trapped inside.
There were approximately 70 employees inside the building when the tornado hit. Everyone has been evacuated, and there were 3 injuries, and they have been transported to area hospitals, and their injuries are non-life-threatening.
Photos of the damage in the tornado are up with the story at KFORnow.com. And the Nebraska baseball team scored 6 unanswered runs and shut out Iowa over the last 5 innings to come away with a 7-4 victory over the Hawkeyes Friday night at Hawks Field at Haymarket Park. Jeff Bryden, KFOR News.
The following is a paid program. The content has been provided by Capital Animal Clinic and may contain pre-recorded material. KFR staff management and ownership are now responsible for the content. Some of the opinions and endorsements provided here are in exchange for compensation.
Welcome to your
The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday morning show. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Cranack.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Back with you. It's into hour 2. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal, the Iron Horse, Gary Sharp is in, and we'll have Bill Dolman back. Cranak's got his little guy, not so little anymore. I think he's hitting cleanup.
Wow. Apparently southpaw. I didn't realize that the little guy's a southpaw.
Tanner, are you a lefty batter? Yeah, you're okay. He's a lefty in anything.
That's a big skill to have. That could get you drafted someday. In all seriousness, like
baseball going well.
From notable pro athlete Elijah Herbal.
Well, did your dad make sure to like put things in your left hand whenever you were a small child to make sure you were a lefty for the athletic ability, or just kind of happened naturally? No, he didn't have a master plan.
That's a lot of questions you're just firing.
Well, and Tanner doesn't want to speak with you anymore. He's giving you that look.
Yeah, I think I don't know about your personal life, but when they turn their back on you, that's usually like, I'm good. I'm done.
That's usually when you call it quits.
There's about 30 cops on the
Elijah
corner.
meet a woman at the bar, just turn around.
There's about 38 cops in front of Tanner. He is going to go flag one down for the weird guy in the mustache at the table. So, Sharpie, how the hell are you?
Mark Horderson was talking to me in the single barrel. I don't want to go back there.
Whoa.
Yes.
What?
This is what spring football has become.
Yes.
I did not hear you very well, Connor. What was
That's
up? What'd you
okay,
say?
We can move on.
He was just piling on Elijah Herbal.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Sharpie, let's spend a minute here, bud. I know you have friends, family connections in Omaha. You have for years, and just kind of we talked with Cranak to start things off, but just kind of gauge where you're at with the destruction and how you've been in communication with those friends and loved ones that are in that area, Elkhorn and Bennington.
So I think I haven't seen, but I think we are very, very lucky that there has not been a loss of life. It did. Where I live in Omaha was well away from Northwest Omaha and into Bennington, but have friends who were impacted. I just tweeted out a little bit ago. A really good friend of mine. They're moving into a home this summer, and he long time, born in Omaha, grew up in Omaha, played a lot of high school sports, always wanted his name in the paper for scoring a touchdown or something. And so he texted a bunch of us today. He goes, I finally made the World Herald. My home is on the front page. So his home, which is not finished yet, is kind of in shambles. But it's going to be tough. I mean, if people are familiar with Omaha, as Mark was alluding to, Northwest Omaha into Bennington was kind of the swath. And it was an unreal day yesterday in Omaha. I know around here in Lincoln, but in Omaha, it was just one after another. And I think the pictures and the videos are heartbreaking. I think when you see up close, the trail of damage is just stunning. And people will rebuild, and the community will come together. I mean, the whole state will come together to help each other. But I think the most important thing about yesterday is, and knock on wood, because I haven't seen an update, is that there is no loss of life. And I think that's a big credit to the emergency system of letting people know that this was going to be bad and to take shelter and prepare for it. So hopefully that statistic continues. But you know what? I think for some, today would be a nice little respite. Let's see a little football for a moment, and then everybody will get back to cleaning up and doing what they have to do.
And that's a good point. You'll have a chance for a chance to step away and be a part of, the third largest city in the state of Nebraska today, typically on Saturdays. That is Memorial Stadium. And Nebraska fans have had this thing kind of ramp up. The anxiousness, the excitement level, and a lot of things that are centering around this spring game. And Rule isn't minimizing this moment. You got the recruiting side of things, but you also have the production side of things, and there's a lot of other important positions, but we're always going to be focused on quarterback here. And man, it should be a fun day for the quarterbacks. Could be a fun day for Nebraska football fans, seeing what all three guys can bring.
Well, don't you guys think? By the way, I just realized, I mean, this is cool. We have the Average Joe Sports Show in person. I don't think people understand what they're getting here, like in person. When the head coach says it's going to be a red-white shootout, yeah, it might turn into a 7-on-7 game, which is okay. I mean, we talked about this on the Average Joe Sports Show podcast of how the importance of how this game is played has lessened. But I'm looking forward to a little 7-on-7. Why not? People are going there to watch the quarterbacks. Let them chuck it around. And also, I think challenge defensive backs who maybe we've given a pass to because we like who their position coach is. But we probably do need to step back and go, wow, who do we trust in the defensive backfield? So I think you'll see some guys tested today by some big boy arms that are going to be throwing the ball.
Do you remember the conversation about quarterbacks last year at this time? It was Jeff Sims, okay. Yeah. What do they have in him? But boy, he played at some Division I school, Georgia Tech.
Well, he was doing interviews on the sideline during the game as the presumptive starter.
Is Casey Thompson coming back? Remember that?
Yep.
That was like Nebraska's two options at quarterback, and a Harburg. Nobody was talking about him because he's one of Nebraska's best H-backs and tight ends. But the quarterback conversation in the last 365 days is remarkably different than a year ago.
Do you think Nebraska has handled the hype better? They learned from last year.
Oh, sorry, Schmidt, I have you muted. That's my bad.
Sorry, no, that's good. No, they have, because the hype was well off, and then the moment was too big for Sims, and it was a bad situation for Nebraska. They ended up figuring it out as best they could. They ran and did what they could, what suited Harburg best on offense. But right now, they just want a couple of reasons here. They want all three quarterbacks to stay. Not that there's any danger that they leave, but in this world of college football, you're worried about departures at quarterback. So, one, you want everybody to stay. Two, you want to keep this thing ramped up competition-wise, pushing one another. That's been a big-time emphasis. And you put both of those together, it's their plan. It is their plan to keep everyone here and keep everyone getting better and really invest in getting better. That's their MO for this quarterback room right now, and that's Glenn Thomas's MO.
Well, do you think there's also an element to the difference in where you are as a program from last year to this year? Do you think any of that, because there was still transfer portal movement that was happening post-spring last season for Husker football, do you think there was an element of trying to show the college football world, I should say, hey, we've come into Nebraska as a coaching staff, Matt Rule and company, and we're building something here, so we need to build some hype right now, and you compare it to a year down the road, and the hype kind of builds itself, the fact that you have a 5-star quarterback, the fact that you're bringing in more talent, Nebraska's name's getting out there among recruits. Do you think there's less of an element needed of that this year, that you need to build some hype?
I think there's part of that, but I also think this. So when they brought in Jeff Sims, they thought Jeff Sims was going to be the bridge that could get them for a couple of years to get their feet on the ground while they build the back end, and Jeff Sims was going to carry him, and they were going to be successful. Now they have a guy whose ceiling is so much higher than Jeff Sims, but he's not expected to carry them, because now they have faith in other parts of their program, whether it be on the field or off the field, that I think they've approached it differently. But there's one thing for sure is, and Rule alluded to this earlier this week, and you guys know this, I mean, we talk about it. I mean, we got so many radio shows that talk Nebraska football, so it's on the tip of everybody's tongue. It's, everybody's discussing it ad nauseum, and it is the thing, is you have to be cognizant of being in the spotlight. It took Rule a little bit to get there. He made a comment last year. He couldn't understand why all these people were on the sidelines. Okay? I've never had that anywhere else. So he had to adjust of what it's like to be the football coach at Nebraska. Don't you guys think that you have three quarterbacks that either their father or they've lived here or they've already gone through it, they all understand what that position encompanies. And it's not just on the field, it's off the field, it's in the fishbowl. I think that's a head start on before you ever get to show off your X's and O's, is that you get that position here and what that position means to the growth of the program, and also that everybody knows you. Everywhere you go, everybody knows who you are. You can't say that about a starting defensive lineman or linebacker in some cases.
I think it's a significant thing with Dylan Raiola. His family ties to Nebraska. His dad certainly understands it. He's been prepared for this moment mentally. And we talked about it yesterday on Hail Varsity, and Connor brought up the topic of, okay, they're going to be playing in front of a big crowd. Can they get ready for next year? I think you have three quarterbacks that are uniquely prepared mentally for what's going to happen today, but most importantly for the season. Dylan's family background. Dominic knows all about this, and he has been groomed to either be the quarterback at Nebraska, the quarterback at Georgia, the quarterback at Ohio State, but especially at Nebraska because of the lineage here. So mentally, in addition to his physical stature, which is unlike, I think, anything anybody's Nebraska's seen physically at the quarterback position, that's a difference. I think Danny Kaelin has been benefited by the fact that Dylan Raiola is here. The pressure is off him, because if Raiola had gone to Georgia and he was the fallback guy as a four-star who improved, but still, it's like, all right, Danny, you're the guy. Everything's going to be on you. But with Dylan Raiola here and taking a lot of that limelight or spotlight, Danny Kaelin's been able to play his game. And Harburg's been used to it. He's been here. He's a Kearney guy, played in it all last year, understood the heat because he took some heat. Wasn't all on him last year. But I think you have three guys uniquely prepared for the moment. Today, look, it's going to show. It's a show. But uniquely prepared mentally for what's going to happen in the fall.
Well, Connor, I want to get your thoughts, being a guy who's down on campus every single day. We see the hype kind of from the outside from a fan perspective, but like what the players are experiencing is the day-to-day life down on campus, down in the J school, in class with Bill Dolman, obviously.
Look, Connor's more focused on his academics. Okay, let's get that straight first.
Yeah,
so whatever peripheral knowledge he has about football.
Well, Connor's focused on happy hour. Let's not BS anybody.
Come on, guys.
But it's a very real discussion of the hype that we discussed from the outside is different than what the players experience on a day-to-day basis. Connor, what is the hype like on campus for guys like Daniel Kaelin and Dylan Raiola in the build of this football program?
I mean, honestly, I think they just kind of go about what they would normally do. I mean, I obviously don't see them all the time. Every now and then I'll see them walking around. Like I saw Dylan Raiola walking outside of a softball game a month ago when I was walking in to go do it for Big Ten Plus, right? So, like, they're just kind of doing what they need to. Obviously, they have to be aware because literally everybody on campus knows who at least Dylan Raiola is. And it's a big deal. Yeah. But I think that I wish I could speak to a better volume on this because I think the hype will be even more real as we get later into the summer and into that next fall semester. But right now, I mean, everybody knows what that quarterback room looks like. Everybody knows that Dylan Raiola is the 5-star. And everybody knows that this is a year that's extremely important, especially offensively, just because of how everything played out last year. I mean, that was a huge topic of discussion throughout really the entire student body. It was like, how do they go from 5-3 to 5-7, right? How does that change? What do they need to do? Well, now on paper, it seems like they've made those changes. Now all the students and fans and literally everybody is waiting for that to come to fruition. How does that look? So I would say the hype is, everybody knows who Dylan Raiola is right now. I think as you get later into July and August, that's when it's really going to pick up. Especially within, the student body and on campus and everything.
This is just coming to my mind out of curiosity. Nebraska's never had a quarterback come early for second semester senior year. Have they?
Adrian
did, okay. But that kind of takes it out of that conversation. But I'm just thinking, the fact that they're here and have a chance to adjust to college, people have a chance to adjust to them. They're not arriving in the fall, and everything's on them in the fall.
Well, and I don't think Adrian came out his freshman season looking like a freshman with that added experience.
Right?
Am I wrong? I mean,
I don't know that first pass in the Colorado game was Then he got hurt. Can I
E on his ankle.
Yeah. Can I change a phrase here? Because I think you'll see it a little bit today. And we're all going to have to adjust on how we look at a quarterback at Nebraska. We talked about this on the show last week. We talked about it on the podcast. I think when people see a quarterback being a quarterback, you're going to have to adjust how you think about that position at the University of Nebraska. And I want to drop the word hype and just go, Nebraska's finally got a quarterback that has possibly the it factor, but that's how the quarterback position is going to be played at Nebraska moving forward, because the offense is going to be different. The offense is going to look drastically different with competent quarterback play, but also a quarterback that can make more plays with his arm than his legs. And the hype is real. I've used it as, when we were all kids, we played the hokey pokey, and, you were like afraid to put the whole body in. I don't want to be Mr. Hype Man here, but he made a couple of throws last week in their scrimmage, and they tested him that you went, damn, that's pretty impressive for a kid that is, 18 years old. It's okay to lean into it, because that kind of a quarterback we haven't had around here in a while, and I think that kind of quarterback, there are people around him to elevate him, and I think as he gets into and adjusts to the speed of the sport, he will elevate other people. So I hope that is on display today, and instead of hype, we go, that's what that's supposed to look like when you get a guy of that stature.
Are we talking similar to Quinn Ewers at Texas, not this past season, but the season before?
I think a little bit. That's a great, whenever that kind of stature to lift a program.
Yeah.
When was the last quarterback at Nebraska? And I kind of know the answer to this, but you're going to have to go back many years that you said that's a guy that eventually can lift the program. Maybe not initially, because there's going to be others that are going to lift him up. But that guy, at the end of the day, and at the end of his career, will have lifted the Nebraska football program.
I think we thought about it with Adrian, but I don't think Adrian ever quite lived up to that, and that's not fully against Adrian. I think you have to look at the pieces that Adrian was working with throughout his time at Nebraska as well. But that's the last guy I think of, but he didn't quite reach that mountaintop, didn't reach the plateau.
It's going to be fascinating as we talk about that it factor. Turner Gill, it factor. Tommy Frazier, it factor. Revisionist, thank God he showed up. Zach Taylor, not necessarily it factor, but he was necessary. How do you manage being mentioned? Because that's what you're hoping to be on the cusp of, is a guy that can change your program at the key spot on the football field and get help around him. I think he has a lot of help, and they're going to not absolutely put Sherpa duty on his back, but I think he can grow into that.
But so let me ask all of you guys, because that's a great point and that's a fair point. But isn't that why he came to Nebraska?
That's what he wanted to relaunch this thing.
Mm-hmm.
But think about
it wasn't about
the
money. That
wasn't about money.
That's what's important, I think, because you heard him say it in the interview with Compton, and he said this at other mediums too. But it was about, you couldn't go to Ohio State and do this. You couldn't go to Georgia and do this. You can come to Nebraska and relaunch, put it back up where it belongs. Because when you think about it as an athlete and one of his stature too, there's only so many times, not only in a career, but in a lifetime, where you can do something that big for that many people, and for a program of that stature that you have family ties with. I mean, again, you think about all the guys who go to Georgia, all the guys who go to Ohio State, all the guys who go to Alabama. That's great because they're great football programs, but it's not the special, connection that he has with the program, and what that would look like if he's the guy to turn it around, because this place is already a frenzy when this team's won 3 games. Can you imagine if he turns it around to 9, 10, 11 by the time he leaves? You couldn't do that at any of those spots, and that's why he's here. It's not because of the money. I value that a lot in, my quarterback. That's what I want to see, and I think he's here for all the right reasons, and hopefully that's an extra motivating factor for him to, buy into the system, play well. Obviously, the talent is there, and I'm really excited to see it on the field.
Well,
and you'll be excited. You'll be excited to have him be the Chicago Bears' #1 draft pick in 2027 after the failed Caleb Williams experiment. But here's
Yeah,
He's been saying this.
He was
He's
giving it to me
saying it.
yesterday, Gary. It was
yeah.
bad.
Smitty mentioned three important quarterbacks. Turner Gill remains the most important recruit in the history of Nebraska football. Without him, Nebraska football does not go into its stratospheric real estate market, right? But Turner Gill came to Nebraska and had to sit out because he was a redshirt freshman, or he played JV ball, right? So he didn't take over as the starter until his sophomore year. Tommy Frazier comes in and arrives in the fall. And it wasn't until, week 6 at Missouri when they finally said, all right, let's let the kid play.
Yep.
And then you had Zach Taylor come in and save a recruiting class because of the misguided recruiting of Harrison Beck. But he was a junior college guy. So you had a seasoned guy who got acclimated to college in Turner Gill. You had Tommy Frazier, who was a phenom, but it wasn't until midway through his freshman year that he took over. And Zach Taylor's got college experience and maturity as a junior college player. That's why I go back to the point of those two guys. I'm not going to put Dylan alone. I think Danny Kalin is significant in this whole equation because I think he probably pushes Dylan a little bit. They get along well. That's great. And he certainly could be a serviceable backup or starter if Nebraska needs it, maybe more so than even a year ago when they put the tight end at quarterback to replace Jeff Sims, right? I think Nebraska's in a better situation depth-wise at quarterback right now with two freshmen than they were last year with what they ended up with.
Bill, they did score a touchdown in that Minnesota game with a tight end and the quarterback. So I'm going to give you guys two things that were told to me this week, not by a coach, but by somebody that has watched a lot of the spring and has watched a lot of Nebraska football and has been involved in Nebraska football. And he said two things stand out. One, he goes, I have very rarely in my time of watching Nebraska football and being involved with Nebraska football seen a quarterback room where all the guys elevated each other, where it just wasn't one guy and then the others just kind of fit in. He goes, they all three have really, really elevated each other's games. And he made a point, and then Rule mentioned it. He said, this is one of the most promising things about either Dylan Raiola or the room in general is they've handled frustration well. Thing to keep in mind is these guys walk in the door, especially Raiola. They've been the best player on their roster from day one. When they were playing Pop Warner all the way to high school, they're the number one guy on that roster. They walked into Nebraska. They're not the number one guy, and so that's an adjustment. And they've always been successful. They haven't had success like play after play after play in spring. How do they deal with frustration? And I was told earlier this week, and then Rule mentioned it, which kind of slipped it in there, which I think is important, is they've handled frustration well. And I think that's a key point of they haven't let one bad series or one bad practice start to stack up. They've learned from it, and they've adjusted, and thus everybody has lifted that room, which I think is a great sign moving forward, but I also think it's an important sign of how good Glenn Thomas will be as the quarterback coach.
I'll say this about Glenn Thomas and the psyche, right? And yeah, dear friend to all of ours is Garth Glissman, and I love his input and take on just quarterbacks. And he's like, we're different dudes. We've got to be treated a little bit special. That's why we get the prima donna tag. And we know Garth, and he's not that. But you've got a different psyche as quarterback because of what you said, dude. They've killed it their whole life, and then when it doesn't go their way, do you know how to respond? Do you know how to dust yourself off? So I think that's been a really good emphasis of, all right, let's look at the psychology of a position and the players we have, and how do we help them handle this? How do we help them manage it? We know that the guy can make the throws, but is it between the ears or not? And that's a lot of times the biggest problem, the mental part of the game. It's not the physical tools, but to pair and scout and do a deep dive on what kind of kid am I getting? Is he mentally tough? Is he coddled? Can he grow and get better? they have done all those assessments. And then there's not a quarterback personality Glenn Thomas hasn't seen in his career. You get that paired together, it's money. It could be money for Nebraska.
When you talk about like the prima donna nature that you have to deal with, and I'm kind of with you that with quarterbacks it's a little played. It's something Matt Rule said earlier this week that, I mean, who's got all the pressure of this program right now? It's the head coach and it's the quarterback. Like the guy that is going to be going up after every single game and talking to the media, good, bad, or ugly, with how the game goes, is the quarterback. And who are the guys that we're going to be keenly listening to in the post-game press conference today? It's the quarterback. So do they have
Who are the guys that we're going to be intently watching today?
Yeah.
It's the quarterback.
Do they have that prima donna tag? Yes. Are they sometimes prima donnas? Yes. Is it rightfully so? Also, you could argue yes.
I mean, it makes sense for all the reasons you guys have laid out. I mean, it's the most important position, arguably, in sports because, I mean, you're running the show. And at the same time, and as you laid out, Gary, too, it's, you know, odds are you're probably the best player on the field through all levels, maybe up until college, maybe that's up until the pros, whatever. And when things don't go your way, I think that's a testament to not only the quarterback being able to bounce back if they can, but the coaching staff, too, of teaching them how to bounce back. Because you don't just do it. It's a level of, you know, being able to be taught, being able to be coached. Okay, this didn't go our way this week. How do we make that go our way next week? I think that's a big part of it, too, of the leaders in the program, i.e. Matt Rule and everybody else on that coaching staff. It can't just be up to the 18-year-old kid in this case because he's an 18-year-old kid at the end of the day, too. I know he's not a normal one, but you have to have a collective effort in order to be able to move on and to, you know, bounce back in a week where maybe things didn't go your way, or if things did go your way, make sure that you don't get too big-headed and make sure that you stick with a plan, trust the process, not to be cliche, and just keep it rolling. So I think it's a combination of the mental of the quarterback and how does that coaching staff teach that mental of the quarterback and, in some cases, control it.
Yeah, I think speaking of quarterbacks, so real quick, I think another reason why you'll see a showcase just coming to mind, isn't TJ Lateef in town?
Yes.
Isn't that their number one quarterback prospect?
And it seems like Nebraska only recruits tight ends and wide receivers. There's quite the collection of pass catchers that are on campus as well.
Yeah. So today's showcase is for the OVs who are here.
But another question for all of you guys, because I've pondered this, and, you know, again, we need to look at the back end of the defense. You know, they got some dudes there, but I think they're going to have to figure out some roles, and some guys are going to have to play really, really well for the first time when they get on the stage. Because I don't worry about the first two levels, but, you know, they're going to adjust with who's going to do what on the back end. But here's the thing that I think about. They don't need Superman at quarterback. They need competent quarterback play, 60% completion percentage, 2-to-1 touchdown, interception. That if they didn't believe that the quarterback position would be much better this year, would they ever say out loud that our goal is to be the number one defense? Because last year, 8 games, they allowed 17 points or fewer. Most times, you'd be in a bowl game and we'd be getting a suntan. Instead, they were sitting at home and we were wearing a winter coat and we were like, so I think they just think that position will be better, which will help them do things like you guys were talking to earlier when Mark was here, get off the field on third down, which was an issue last year. Also, take more chances to force turnovers because we won't have as much quick change defense where, boom, the offense turns it over and we're right back out there and we got to carry the weight of today, you know, for this team to win a football game.
They're going to get help on offense because of who they've got under center for sure. Let's shift it over to the defense as we spent a lot of time. It's Hail Varsity Radio Weekend Edition here at the Single Barrel inside the Graduate 9th and P. And, man, I love Saturdays because you've got so many Husker fans that come and not only grab breakfast here at the Single Barrel or grab a steak, but also stay at the Graduate as they kick off their Nebraska football experience. We're about an hour and a half away from the spring game and kickoff. Gary Sharp, Bill Dolman, Elijah Herbal, Chris Schmidt, Connor Clark, as we've got about a half hour left with the weekend edition. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play for the podcast where you can get us. So, guys,
did we just talk about quarterbacks for 30 minutes?
We did.
Wow.
It's okay. It's totally good. We have Elijah Judy.
I feel like that is the talking point of the day, the quarterbacks, not to cut you off.
It is. We have Elijah Judy that we're interested in seeing. You have Cam Lenhart. You've got a loaded jack position. You've got a big, full room of jack linebackers. You've got that middle level of linebackers. And to your point, the secondary, because you got a lot of safety / defensive backs. You feel good about that first rung, but who breaks through? And do you think the defense can let it rip and play loose? Do they have a little revenge on their mind today?
Yeah, I think they will. But I don't know how many guys are going to play. But that's okay, because this is Nebraska's spring social event, and we kind of want to see the young guys. Like I already know about Nash, and I already know about Ty, and I know about Gifford. I mean, we want to see the young guys. I think so. I don't think. You know what? I don't think it would be a good thing if the offense rolled in today and just put up big, huge, crooked numbers. I would like to see the defense, whatever form it is with their combinations, I'd like to see the defense dominate today. I would like to see that. I would like to see him force turnovers. I'd like to see him create some havoc. I would like to see him make some big plays. I want to see the defense dominate today. And I know that's kind of counter of what we were just talking about in the quarterbacks, but I think that would be – I think I want to see one side of the ball dominate today. I don't want to see, hey, the offense had a good day, but so did the defense. I want to see the defense dominate.
Well, and I think the conversation sometimes in a spring game about who won the day can be a little bit overplayed because there is a lot of behind the scenes politicking is not the right word, but that's what I'm going to say of the offense doesn't want to show too much on film. The defense doesn't want to show too much on film. I'm much more curious in like some individual battles between defense and offense. And as you look at the defensive line, like, how did Nebraska's tackles, we're probably going to see a lot of young tackles today, how do they handle a guy in James Williams who showed himself to be a very, very good pass rusher last year? What does that battle look like? A guy in Roquan Buckley who's come over to the offensive side of the ball, what does he look like going up against an Elijah Judy? That's what I'm more curious in terms of, does the defense win the day? Does the offense win the day? You could look at battles between corners and wide receivers as well. What does Bly Hill look like against Jamal Hill? Jamal Banks. I went UFC there for a second. Jamal Banks. What does that battle look like? Like, you can talk about who wins the day, and as we kind of talked about, I think if the coaching staff were to choose how today goes, they'd want the offense to win because of how last season went. Therefore, I'm going to be locked in on some individual battles and see who wins those battles. The guys that Nebraska's going to need to rely upon either as a starter or for depth next season, how did they look in their individual battles? Because that means more to me in a day like today than what does the overall picture look like, because we don't know how much the offense is going to be holding back or how much the defense is going to be holding back or even how this game is going to be officiated today.
I'm hoping that the defense, and we mentioned this a little bit yesterday, that Nebraska played a lot of guys on defense, top 2 units last season, 25 guys per game. I'm hoping to see the gap between first and second string narrow so that it's a lot more interchangeable, not just that they're playing guys for depth and they're giving guys, keeping guys as fresh as they possibly can, which I think was something that did play out as the season went on last year, that even though they wore down, and a lot of that may have been a mental wear down because how many games are we going to lose 13-10 on last-second field goals? But to have the top unit be your starters, be your black shirts or whatever it is, but the second and even into the third units, that there's not a huge drop-off. That you're not just playing to give a guy a break. You're playing guys because they can break a game. And I think that's the next step for Tony White's defense, is that they're interchangeable top 25 players.
And they also, one thing they've done this spring, and this is what I kind of expect today, is, man, they have woofed. So there has been some thumping that's gone on, and it's been defensive guys that have been running it. So guys like Marquise Buford, who can kind of back it up, who has a little thump to him. I'm looking forward to that. I think there'll be a lot of jawing today, which is good. Kind of back to Elijah's point of individual competition. You said something about defensive lineman. Kai Wallen is another guy to watch today. Like, what's the next jump for him? But I'm very curious on what their defense does when those young tackles are out there. I think Nebraska's done a good job in the spring across the board developing depth, but they need to develop depth at tackle. And so some young tackles and some young offensive linemen that entered the program for this semester, I'll see if they're challenged today. Like, I can't wait to watch a Pile and a Bricks and then a Gatula and a Sam Sledge.
Yep.
And those last two have had a really good spring. And then a guy who is not young, but is young to the program, that was supposed to just come in and bam, he was going to roll and he was going to be a guaranteed starter. What about Mazuka on the offensive line? Like Mazuka and Dowdell are two guys that I think in February we all said, man, those guys are bona fide. They're starting at their position. I can't wait to see them. Well, we can't wait to find any information on them because there hasn't been a ton in the spring.
Right. I'm still of the opinion that those two guys can be penciled in as starters, not in penciled in, but I'm curious to see what they look like too, especially Dowdell. I think Mazuka's got so much college football experience under his belt. As Matt Rule said a little earlier in the spring, it's about finding his way within this program. I think he's got a lot of skill. I'm still prepared to pencil him in as a starter. Dowdell, though, that's the question to me today in terms of if Dowdell shines, if he looks good, maybe it quells some of Nebraska fans' concerns saying Nebraska needs to go to the portal for the running back position. That's a position we haven't talked about yet this morning almost at all, and it might be more intrigue than anywhere else at the running back position. With rumors, Nebraska wants Dylan Edwards in the portal. There's questions about what Nebraska does there. What does the running back position look like there? Does Nebraska look like they have some guys they can roll with, or does Nebraska look like they need some work that needs to be done in this summer?
Cotter, why don't you kick off the running back discussion? That's where we're going next. And who's on your bingo card? And what does the running game look like today? Because while we spent a half hour on the quarterback and Nebraska's offense and pro style and all that good stuff, push comes to shove, this state still wants 3rd and 2 to be a 4-yard carry by the I-back.
Well, I mean, we've been so adamant about how there's not really, that standout guy. And you talk about 1,000, 750, 500 in that room.
Yeah.
That's what you're aiming for. And I know that that's something that hasn't really been all that discovered. And I'm not saying that that's going to be discovered here today. I don't think that will be by any stretch of the imagination, but I just want to see somebody look like they're going to separate themselves from the rest of the pack. And either maybe that forces Coach Rule to go out and pursue Dylan Edwards pretty hard, which I don't think many people will be upset about. But, I mean, Emmett Johnson is a guy that we saw a lot last year. He's somebody that intrigues me. I think that there's big play potential that he possesses. We saw that in a couple of games in 2023. So he's one guy that really interests me. I want to see him today. And you mentioned the 3rd and 2 part. I mean, what kind of percentage, and this is a question for the room, I mean, what percent of that is the running back and what percent of that is the 5 big uglies that are right in front of him? That's going to be another real question for this team because, again, we've talked about it on the show at length. You get into the 3rd and 4th, 3rd, 2nd, like, how are you going to pick that 3rd down up? Is it going to be the running back? Is it going to be the O-line? What's the percentage split there? That's going to be an interesting question.
Well, I would say it's 50-50, but there was no fear of the quarterback throwing to get that 3rd and 2.
Exactly.
So there was 75 buddies at the line of scrimmage to stop the run. And that, you get better quarterback play, you're going to get better run game for Nebraska. And Sharpie, you touched on this, the under center run game, right? The under center run game was iffy, and you had quarterback run game and shotgun quarterback run game that was your success last year, aside from the sprint option. That's another thing that's going to be pretty fun with the running back room today is, okay, can they line up with a fullback or a one back set and run the football, run some counters, run some ISOs, run some dives, run some power? Can they do that at a higher level this year? Because they got a whole boatload of experience. And then that second unit that you're talking about, Bill, what's the gap look like on the line? But that run game's got to come forward, so it's not all on your freshmen.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And the quarterback, the quarterback handoff game is important. But there's something Connor was saying that we've all talked about. So the one thing I like about Matt Rule is Rule will say, you got to listen closely to Rule, because he'll say things and he'll then move on. But if you listen closely, he said Thursday, I'm not worried about the running game. Basically intimating, because he listens to us all, he consumes a lot of content that's said about his program, that we all have concerns about his running back room. Why did he say that? Is it because he doesn't have concerns about his running back room, or kind of on the quarterback handoff game can take the next step? Is he really likes his offensive line and blocking in the run game? So that's the question that we as media and fans go, okay, is it the room or is it the overall part of the run game that they're going to be fine? But why would the head coach say that?
Well, and I also
not to disarm people and go, hey, just back down. But he's not just throwing that out there to be throwing it out there.
I also wonder if he's alluding to schematically. We've heard some more RPO coming out of practice in the spring. I wonder if schematically they have some plans to open up the running game as well, saying, hey, with a quarterback like Dylan Raiola back there, you always have to be worried about him pulling it out and throwing it over the top, beating you deep, so you can't commit to the running game as hard as teams did last year. I wonder if that's an element as well.
Well, and I think also not having 45 guys in the box will also help that run game.
A question I have for you guys,
which would be a penalty if you're wondering.
Is whenever we evaluate the running game today, are you guys more worried about what the stats look like at the end of the day? Or are you more worried about the eye test? Like with Matt Rule saying before he started his first season in Nebraska, 75 rushing yards per quarter. Are you more worried about Nebraska's running backs hitting a certain rushing mark today, that the yards per carry? Or are you worried about what the eye test looks like with these running backs?
I don't think the statistics with the run game today mean anything at all. I think it's eye test. I tend to think it is. There's more confidence in the offensive line and in the depth of the offensive line, that Nebraska has more than maybe 6 competent, healthy players, which is what I think they really had last year. Last year for the first part of the season is, when is Teddy going to be back? And when Teddy comes back, is he going to be healthy enough at that position? And then you had Jenkins got in there to play a couple of different positions, and Scott solidified the center spot. But I think that they feel better about the depth along the offensive line. So that's what I think he's alluding to, which is the most important thing. Yeah. I think when it comes to the running back room, this is where the spring has been pass, no pass. They don't have a complete room, because Gabe Ervin, who Matt Rule loves, he was the foundational player when he got here, saying, that's my guy. This is a guy who was bought in right away. And then he suffers a horrible hip injury and doesn't play in the spring. So we don't know what Ervin is going to be going forward. Ramir Johnson, whom they also love as a third down back, hasn't played at all this spring. And you expect that when he does, and if he is healthy come fall, that he will be a safety outlet for Raiola, for Kalen, for Harburg, or whatever. And then you have Ives, who barely played at all, if nothing on special teams. Mazuka, who I know, Gary, you've said may be a focal point in the game today, just to see what can this guy do. Daldell, we've not seen. Really, nobody has seen him since he started Mississippi, in high school. So I think the running back room as a whole is an incomplete. There's a lot of guys, a lot of unknowns. There's a health issue. We've not seen him. That's going to be the off-season development as to who comes back into fall camp healthy. Now, I don't think Edwards is coming here. I think he's going to go to Kansas, where he was a high school star. But nevertheless, there's a lot of talk. But I think Nebraska just doesn't know right now what it has in the room, other than some good athletes, but they feel good about the offensive line.
Guys, we'll wind it down here at the Single Barrel Weekend Edition. Hail Varsity Radio. Spring game kicks off in about an hour. Connor Clark back at studio. Bill Dolman, Gary Sharp, Elijah Herbal, Chris Schmidt. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play for the podcast. Subscribe and like the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. I want to end with the recruiting front. And you've got Michael Terry, another 5-star phenom. The guy can play a lot of spots, can be a running back, a wide receiver, a safety, or a hybrid linebacker, says his coach. Kid is all sorts of big, physical, and talented, out of Texas, San Antonio region. TJ Lateef, the Lutheran Orange County quarterback that they're eyeing for 2025. And Eli Say it with me, Kalan Avia.
Sure.
Good job.
Yeah.
Good job. Good effort.
I'm rolling with that.
Harper's the disappointed father. Good job. Good effort.
Schmitty looked like Roger Goodell at the NFL draft. Oh, good God.
Well, anywho, so offensive line, athlete, quarterback. It's a big showcase.
Speaking of that, didn't it seem like maybe perhaps the draft began a little too late in the day for Roger Goodell?
Yeah, he
for
did
whatever reason.
He struggled that opening night.
A little
reading.
disheveled. Perhaps happy hour came early. I don't know.
He
But
had
it was
back surgery a couple weeks ago, so I'm wondering if he was off the pain meds.
And then,
Okay.
and then he got picked
Or
up
on
by
them.
that big guy.
That's what I'm
and
saying.
then That probably didn't help him at all either.
Yeah. He walked out pretty dang slow for that Broncos Bo Nix pick. He looked like he was in a little bit
I
of
would
pain.
too.
I wonder if he was
dreading it.
he was
I'd
juiced
walk
up a
away
little
from
bit.
that pick.
You bastard.
Sorry to change the subject from quarterback play,
But all honesty, okay, so let's land the plane here that we began about quarterbacks. If you are healthy and everything goes according to plan, shouldn't we be talking in 2027 about a first-round pick at quarterback from Nebraska?
to the Chicago
No,
Bears.
don't say it, Bill.
Just move on past recruiting and go to draft day 2027, Mr. Costner.
You haven't seen the dude play.
Hey, I'm the Sonny Weaver
Sonny
of the
Weaver
show.
Jr.
It's, hey, the spring game, it's a social event for all of us. It is for the guys that potentially could be playing in that spring game. And they'll put on a show and they will sell it. And they've been very aggressive because they want eyeballs on their program. I think it's a big deal. The names that they've been able to get here on campus, official or unofficial, I think they will get a in-state commitment, possibly at tight end out of the weekend. That's my prediction on recruiting, which all Nebraska does is produce tight ends and recruit tight ends.
Yes.
As we wind it down here, you guys want to pick some second half stars that we'll be talking about? I think it could be a fun
this
experiment.
is the sicko committee of Nebraska football.
Right.
If you can go like to the 5th or 6th guy on a depth chart and go, that's the spring game guy of 2024. Who is your Mike Demps?
Who's getting the Isaiah Harris Trophy?
Wow.
My Chris Butler Award goes to?
I mean, the Zach Darlington Award could work as well.
Ooh.
Some potential names here for what you can do the
Isaiah
second half all-star.
Llewellyn.
I'm fired.
Check the stats, Elijah, in the 06 spring game.
I want to see Barney. I want to see Ja'Cory Barney and what he can do with all three quarterbacks. Harburg's kind of my focus going in. I expect Raiola and Kalen to play well. And I expect Shavers to make some oohs and ahs happen. I think they'll carry it over. I think they're impressive. But Barney, I mean, he's a freshman talent, and I like his name and his athleticism. Sharpie, you've got crew down in Florida that have been talking about him as an under-the-radar wow guy from when Nebraska signed him. I think he shows out today.
Hey, one quick thing. The 2 Live crew down there that has been burning me up. The Miami guys, by the way, remember in the COVID year, Nebraska had a collection of Miami guys that said, peace, I'm out. The Miami guys that have come here, and Shavers is in that mix, Tarver is in that mix, Boodle is in that mix. I mean, those guys have played really, really well this spring. That's a good thing for Nebraska because that door is open down there. My guy, Kobe Bretz, finally healthy from Omaha West Side, finally will show what he can do.
I like that pick. Offensive is a little sexier, but I like the pick. I was probably going to go Demetrius Bell's a name. I wonder if he's going to be a second half guy or a first half guy, how much we're going to see him in the first half. You get what I'm saying, where he's at within the program. I'm excited to see him and some of the younger tight ends as well. It's such a loaded tight end room. We know that's going to be a big part of the Matt Rule offense. I'm talking guys like Flint's probably not as much as a pass catcher. Smith Flores is kind of that tweener guy, Chris Hickman style, where is he a wide receiver? Is he a tight end? We're not quite sure. I'm excited to see some of those guys, and some of those guys might be a little more eye test with their blocking as well as their pass catching. But I'm excited to see some of the younger tight ends that's a real non-answer. But I think Demetrius Bell is the number one guy that I think might shine in the second half because wide receiver position should be fun. I just don't know how much they're going to air it out in the second half.
I'm kind of going with some name guys. Fedoni last year, speaking of tight end, Fedoni is he healthy? He's missed 2 years practically, and then he goes through a season. Is he now the guy that Nebraska expected him to be, pre-Carter Nelson, right? I mean, the same kind of attention Carter Nelson got, Fedoni was getting 2 years ago. Does he take that move to where he's not just a leader off the field, which I think we all agree that he has a presence in the program, but is he now the explosive, reliable player at tight end? So he's more of an established guy. You mentioned Bly Hill. I think that's an intriguing pickup to come from St. Francis, to think you're going to be a difference maker, or that they think he's going to be a difference maker in the secondary. And the move of Hartzog from corner to safety, I don't know if we're going to have a full picture of how that's going to be. Nobody plays harder than Malcolm. He's a small guy. But to move from corner to safety, we probably won't see the fruits of that transition to, in a one afternoon. But I think that's a big move that, Coop said in his deal that, we've not utilized him the right way, and maybe this is the best position for him. So that's kind of a couple of intriguing spots that I'm looking at.
Bag, your last Hail Varsity radio show as a non-play-by-play man in baseball. What are you looking for?
He might still be an undergrad next year. We still got.
Bill's going to do all he can to keep me there. But I mean, I kind of agree with Bill. I want to see and again, we won't get this probably today, but I want to see a breakout Fedoni game at some point. I know it's going to be limited today, but I mean, Elijah asked me earlier about the Raiola effect on campus and, kind of the hype around the students for that. When Thomas Fedoni announced he was coming to Nebraska, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
And since then, it's been obviously a tough go with injuries and hasn't been the player that we all thought we were getting, again, because of said injuries and all the external factors. I'm waiting to see that come to the forefront. What can this guy do? Because he's a freak. He's big. He's extremely strong, extremely athletic. I want to see that connection between him and Raiola, especially. What can he bring to this offense? Because he's a dynamic tight end, in my opinion. I'm really excited to see what he can do because it feels like something we've just been starved of for the last 3 years. And at some point, I feel like we're going to get it, and I hope that's sooner rather than later. But that's where I'm going to go.
That'll wind us down here for the Hail Varsity Weekend Edition here at the Single Barrel. When you're in town or headed this way, make sure you come by the Single Barrel for a great steak or breakfast. And, of course, the Graduate, always a good spot. Sharpie, thanks for coming down, man. Appreciate you.
Hey, are we doing this tomorrow night?
Yes. We will. We are going to do a live version of the Average Joe Sports Show, a live cast, which will be nice. Billy D, thank you.
Hopefully. Let's add hopefully. If all goes well.
Elijah's like, maybe. Thank you, Elijah. Appreciate you. Carter, thanks for hanging out. Chris Schmidt, and we'll be back at you tomorrow with the Average Joe live cast. And, of course,
you guys think Nebraska will win today?
I do.
I waited.
Thank you.
I know you did. Final shot there. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, get the podcast, Hail Varsity YouTube channel, subscribe and like. We'll talk to you next time on Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
Red beer time.